I didn't stop drinking because I hit some dramatic rock bottom. I stopped because I started noticing that even when life looked fine on the outside, I didn't feel fine on the inside. I was literally getting lost. So if you've ever wondered where alcohol is affecting you more than you want to admit, especially as a mom, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Justin. I'm a therapist, a mom of two, and on this channel, I talk about emotional regulation, motherhood, sobriety, and identity, really the shifts in real life. This video is not about shame. It's not about extremes, and it's definitely not about telling anyone what they should do. This is really about talking honestly about something I think a lot of women experience, but don't always say out loud. That alcohol can feel normal, common, and socially accepted while still quietly making you feel worse. What actually changed and what was harder than I expected and what got better. For me, I stopped drinking. Really, it was less about one big moment and more about a pattern I couldn't unsee anymore. I started noticing that alcohol wasn't really giving me what I thought it was giving me. What I wanted from it was a break, a way to relax, a way to turn off my brain, a way to take the edge off after a long day. But what I was actually getting was more anxious, less patient, more mental fog, and a harder time recovering emotionally. And I think this is where a lot of moms get stuck because it's not always obvious. It's not always extreme. Sometimes it just looks like I look forward to this too much. I don't like how I feel after. I'm more on edge than I used to be, or I just don't think this is helping me anymore. The term that I used to use was it no longer served me. And that was the shift for me. Not this is out of control, but more like this is not aligned with who I want to be. At that time, this was 5.5 years ago. So this was before I had my second baby, before I went back to school to get my master's in social work, just as like timeline. But when really no one talks about is when they stop. So I think one of the hardest parts of stopping drinking is that you don't just remove alcohol, you're removing a coping strategy. And even if it wasn't only coping strategy, or even if it was your only coping strategy, it may have been one of the fastest ones. It was a quick signal. The day is over. I don't have to think anymore. I can finally exhale. So when you remove that, you're left with something a lot more vulnerable, your actual emotions. And that can feel really uncomfortable at first because then you have to sit with the stress, the overwhelm, the frustration, the loneliness, the identity questions, all the things alcohol helped blur for a little while. And I think that's why some women stop drinking and then feel surprised that they feel more emotional at first. But that doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It usually means you're finally feeling what was already there. So, putting on my therapist lens, why this happens from a therapist perspective, this makes a lot of sense. Alcohol can temporarily dampen stress in the moment, but it doesn't actually increase your ability to regulate stress long term. In fact, for a lot of people, it interferes with recovery. So if you're already dependent, already overstimulated, already emotionally maxed out, alcohol can create this cycle where you feel temporary relief followed by more dysregulated later. That might look like more irritability the next day, more anxiety, more emotional sensitivity, or less patient with your kids, your partner, or yourself. So a lot of women think, why do I feel so off lately? And they assume it's just motherhood, hormones, stress. burnout, their job. And sometimes it is those things. But alcohol may also be making it harder for your nervous system to actually recover from those things. That was a huge shift for me, realizing that what I thought was helping me unwind was actually making it harder for me to feel grounded. What was harder than I expected? I think one of the biggest things that was harder than I expected was the identity piece. Because when drinking is normalized, especially socially, stopping can make you feel a little out of place. You start noticing how often alcohol is built into connection, celebration, stress relief, or even just the idea of deserving a break. And then there's the question, who am I if I'm not doing that anymore? Okay, that sounds dramatic, but I think it's actually really common because anytime you stop doing something that used to be a part of your routine, your identity has to catch up. And then there's a lot when it comes to the social discomfort. You have to explain it, not explaining it, feeling like people are paying attention even when they don't. They're probably not. Wondering whether you need a good enough reason. And I just want to say this clearly. You do not need a dramatic story to choose something different for yourself. You don't need to justify wanting to feel better. You don't. What actually got better? What got better for me was not that life suddenly became easy. I got pregnant relatively short after. It felt more emotionally honest. That's how I felt. More aware, more grounded, and more able to trust myself. Like literally, colors were more vibrant. I also noticed that I had more space between what I was feeling and how I responded. And as a mom, that matters because sometimes the goal isn't to never feel stressed, it's to have a little bit more capacity inside the stress. A little more pause, a little more choice, a little more steadiness. I felt more present, way less foggy, less disconnected from myself. And maybe most importantly, I stopped outsourcing relief to something outside of me. I started learning what actually helped me regulate, not numb, not escape, regulate. And that changed more than I expected, along with a lot of books that I've read. So looking at it big picture, and this is why I think this topic matters so much, because this isn't just about alcohol. It's about what we reach for when we're overwhelmed. It's about how high functioning moms cope. It's about what happens when your life looks okay on paper, but internally you still feel off. That's why this connects so deeply to things like overstimulation, burnt out, and even body or identity changes. Because the deeper question is really, what do I actually need to feel like myself again? If this resonates with you, you're absolutely not alone. And if you're in a season where you're questioning your relationship with alcohol or just wanting more clarity, grounding, and to feel like yourself again, that matters. On this channel, I talk about emotional regulation, real life motherhood, sobriety, and identity shifts in a way that's honest and actually useful. So subscribe if that's the kind of support and connection you've been looking for. And I would love to know in the comments what changed for you when you started rethinking alcohol, or what's been the hardest part of it. You are loved, you matter, and you deserve to be safe. See you next time.